It was just after 9 p.m. when I heard the front door creak open, followed by the soft sound of footsteps. At first, I thought it might be the wind or maybe the dog getting restless again. But then I saw her, my stepdaughter, Emma, standing in the hallway, her eyes red, face puffy, and cheeks streaked with tears. She looked so small in that moment, even though she was almost a teenager now. Her backpack was still hanging off one shoulder, half-zipped, and her hands were nervously clutching the strap like she didn't know what to do next. And then with a shaky voice that cracked right in the middle, she asked, "Can I sleep next to you tonight?" I froze for a second, not because I didn't want her there, but because I hadn't seen her this broken in a long time. Emma's not the kind of kid who cries easily. She's usually strong, even when she's hurting. She's been through a lot. The divorce, switching schools, trying to fit into two different families that don't always make sense together. And even though we've been living under the same roof for over 2 years now, it's still been a slow process building that trust. Tonight felt like something different, something deeper. Something must have happened. I gently nodded and moved over to make space on the couch. She didn't say anything at first. She just kicked off her shoes, crawled under the blanket, and leaned her head on my shoulder like she had been carrying a weight all day. I didn't want to push her. I just sat there quietly, letting her breathe. But my heart was racing, and a million thoughts were swirling around in my head. What happened at school? Did someone hurt her? Was it about her mom again? Or maybe something even worse that she didn't know how to put into words yet? The silence between us stretched on, not uncomfortable but heavy. I could feel the tension in the air, like something important was about to be said. She finally whispered, "They said something about you. At school." Her voice was barely above a breath. That's when I felt my stomach twist. What could they have possibly said? And why did it affect her like this? I turned slightly to look at her, but she was staring straight ahead, eyes glassy and distant. Whatever it was, it had clearly shaken her to the core. And just like that, I knew this night wasn't going to be like any other. Something had been broken, or maybe it was something waiting to be repaired. Either way, I had to be ready for whatever came next. But before I could even ask the next question, Emma sat up, wiped her face, and said, "Can we just stay like this for a while? I'm not ready to talk yet." And so we did. I didn't know what was coming, but something told me this night would change everything between us. We stayed like that on the couch for what felt like hours, though it was probably no more than 15 minutes. Emma's breathing eventually steadied, and I could feel the tension in her shoulders begin to ease just a little. I didn't want to press her, but the way she held herself tight like she was trying not to fall apart told me something serious had happened. My mind kept circling back to her words. "They said something about you at school." I kept wondering who they were. Kids at school? A teacher? Maybe someone from her mom's side? The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. Emma had always been a little quiet, more observant than talkative. When she first came into my life, right after I married her mom, she barely spoke to me. And I didn't blame her. She'd already gone through a lot, bouncing between 2 homes, trying to figure out where she really belonged. Her mom and I tried to make things as steady as possible, but there were always cracks. You could see them in the little things. The way Emma never unpacked fully at our house, or how she avoided bringing friends over, like she wasn't sure how to explain this part of her life. But over time she started opening up. Not in big ways, but in small moments. Like the time she asked me to help with her science project, even though her mom wasn't home. Or when she asked if I could drive her to her dance recital because her dad had canceled last minute. Those small asks meant everything. And tonight, when she came in crying and asked to sleep next to me, I knew it wasn't just about being scared. It was about needing to feel safe with someone she could trust. Still, the question remained. What could have happened at school that made her break down like this? Was it bullying? Rumors? Something online? Kids today go through so much behind the scenes, and half the time adults don't even notice until it spills out in moments like this. I kept thinking back, trying to remember if anything strange had happened lately. Had she been quieter than usual? Was she avoiding eye contact more? I felt this growing guilt in my chest, like maybe I should have picked up on something sooner. Just then, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She flinched, didn't move to check it. I glanced down and saw a group chat notification pop up. It was one of those casual ones. A mix of emojis and abbreviations I couldn't make sense of, but her reaction to it wasn't casual at all. She pulled the blanket tighter and turned away. I could hear her sniffle again, trying to hold it in. Something about that message triggered her, and I suddenly had the urge to grab the phone and see for myself. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I leaned in and gently said, "Whenever you're ready, I'm here." She nodded without looking at me, and for now that had to be enough. But deep down I knew the truth was coming, and it wasn't going to be easy. The next morning, Emma was already up before me, curled in the corner of the kitchen table with a cup of tea she probably didn't drink. She looked tired, not the kind of tired you fix with sleep, but the kind that comes from carrying something too heavy for too long. I didn't say anything right away. I just started making breakfast, hoping the smell of eggs and toast might make the silence a little easier to break. She watched me quietly, barely touching the phone on the table beside her. It vibrated once, twice, but she didn't even glance at it. That's when I knew it wasn't over. Whatever was going on wasn't just a one-time thing. This was something ongoing, something that was eating away at her even when no one was looking. While we sat eating, I tried to ease into it. "You didn't really talk last night," I said softly. "Still okay if we don't talk now. But whenever you're ready, I'm here." She nodded again, that same nod from the night before. But this time her voice came through, small but steady. "They posted something about you. Online." The words hit harder than I expected. "Posted something about me?" I asked, trying to stay calm. She took a shaky breath and said, "A video. From a long time ago, I think. It's just people talking, but they were saying you were fake. That you're not who you pretend to be at home." I felt my heart drop. I didn't know what video she was talking about, but I knew middle school kids could be brutal and gossip travels fast, especially when there's a screen involved. My past wasn't perfect. I'd made mistakes, some things I regretted, especially during the rough patches before I met her mom. But I had worked hard to move past all that, to build something real with this family. Emma looked down at her plate, pushing crumbs around with her fork. "They said you got arrested once. Is that true?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I swallowed hard. There it was. The crack in the foundation. I knew this conversation would happen someday, just never expected it like this. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. She jumped slightly, eyes wide with anxiety. I stood up, trying to keep my tone light. "It's probably just a delivery." But in my gut, something told me otherwise. When I opened the door, I was met by a woman I recognized from Emma's school. She introduced herself as Mrs. Carter, the vice principal. Her expression was tight, serious. "I know this is sudden, but may I come in? I need to speak with you and Emma about something that happened yesterday. It's important." Emma heard her voice from the kitchen. Her fork dropped against the plate. Her body stiffened like she'd been caught in something. My mind raced. Whatever this was, it wasn't just online rumors anymore. Something bigger was unfolding, and we were right at the center of it. I stepped aside and let Mrs. Carter in, trying to keep my expression neutral even though my chest felt tight. Emma stayed seated at the table, frozen, eyes flicking between us as the vice principal stepped into the living room. Mrs. Carter looked at her, then at me, and gently said, "I'm sorry to come by unannounced, but this couldn't wait." Emma's hands were clenched under the table, and I could see her jaw tightening, like she was trying to hold something in. I sat down beside her, resting my hand lightly on the table, not too close, just enough to let her know I was there. Mrs. Carter took a seat across from us and pulled out a printed screenshot from her folder. "There's a video that started circulating in a few student group chats yesterday," she began carefully. "It involves conversations from several years ago. Some local gossip about a bar fight. an arrest, and a few unverified claims. She slid the paper toward me, but I didn't need to look. I already had a sinking feeling what it was about. It's not just the video, she continued. Some students used it to target Emma. There were comments, cruel ones, saying she shouldn't live in your house, that she's better off without you. And one post claimed you're dangerous. It spread faster than we could control. Emma lowered her head and whispered. They called me fake too. Said I pretend to have the perfect family. Her voice trembled and something in me snapped. Not in anger but in pain. No kid should carry that kind of weight, especially not because of someone else's past. Mrs. Carter looked sympathetic but serious. We've suspended the students involved and launched a digital conduct investigation. But the rumors spread fast. Some parents have already called the school, asking questions about your background. She paused. We have policies, but this situation's delicate. And frankly, the way Emma's been affected, we need to act quickly. I felt cornered, like every step I'd taken to rebuild my life was suddenly under a microscope. But more than that, I saw how it was affecting Emma. The walls she'd worked so hard to bring down were going back up, brick by brick, right in front of me. I know it's a lot, Mrs. Carter said, softening. But I think it's best we have a more formal meeting with her mom and the school counselor. And I need to ask, she hesitated, is there anything about the story that is true? The arrest? The fight? I nodded slowly, not in shame but in honesty. There's truth, but not the way it's being told now. Before anyone could say another word, Emma stood up and walked to her room without looking back. The sound of her door clicking shut hit harder than anything else. I looked at Mrs. Carter, then at the cold plate of food on the table and realized everything we had built was now hanging by a thread. And whatever came next could either save it or tear it all apart. Mrs. Carter quietly gathered her papers, sensing the tension in the room had tipped too far to fix in one visit. I'll follow up soon, she said softly, offering a polite nod before slipping out the door. The silence she left behind felt heavy, like it had weight of its own. I stared at Emma's door, half tempted to knock, but I knew she needed space. At least for now. I sat back down at the table, head in my hands, trying to piece together how everything had spiraled so fast. The past, something I thought I had finally left behind, had clawed its way back in, dragging both Emma and me into its mess. But even in all that noise, something about this still didn't feel right. There was no public video of my arrest. That incident was old, sealed, and never made it online. Someone had to have gone digging. Or worse, made something up. Just then my phone buzzed. A message popped up from an unknown number. Asterisk, you should have stayed in the past. She deserves better. Asterisk, my stomach dropped. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just teenage gossip anymore. Someone out there wanted to cause real damage. I quickly tapped to check the number. But it was masked, untraceable. A second message followed. This time it was a photo. Emma. At school. Candid, taken from a distance. Her back was turned, walking toward the building unaware. The timestamp was yesterday morning. My heart pounded as a wave of fear crept over me. This wasn't just someone spreading rumors. Someone was watching her, tracking her. I rushed to Emma's room and knocked, trying to keep my voice steady. Emma? I need to show you something. No response. I knocked again. Please, it's important. The door cracked open slightly, just enough to reveal her tired eyes. I held out the phone. Her face went pale as she stared at the picture. That's from yesterday, she whispered. That's my friend's jacket I borrowed. She didn't say anything else. Just slowly opened the door wider and sat on her bed. I followed, still trying to process what this meant. Emma, I said carefully, this isn't just about what happened at school. Someone's targeting us. This is personal. Her voice came out shaky. You think it's someone who knows you? I hesitated. Maybe. But there's something about the timing, about how fast it spread. And that message. They're trying to scare us." She looked up at me, and for the first time her fear turned into something else, anger. "Then why now? Why not last year? Why not when Mom first got married to you?" Before I could answer, her phone buzzed on the bed. She picked it up and gasped. A video had just been sent to her directly. Not posted in a group chat. Sent to her. She tapped play. The shaky footage showed a man arguing loudly with someone in a parking lot. But the audio had been edited, twisted. Words I never said were spliced in, making me sound unhinged. "Dangerous. They're faking things now," she said quietly, eyes wide. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about taking you down." I took the phone from Emma's trembling hands and watched the video closely. Whoever made it had gone to great lengths. Editing the lighting, cutting pieces of real footage with fake audio, mixing in flashes of anger from another time in my life when I wasn't proud of who I was. But the setting was wrong. The clothes were wrong. Even the background didn't match. And that's when I realized this wasn't just old footage twisted around. Someone had digitally altered it. Emma was staring at me, her voice just above a whisper. "You didn't say those things, right?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "Not then. Not ever." She nodded slowly. "I believe you." And just hearing those words made the weight in my chest feel a little lighter. But we both knew this wasn't over. Whoever was behind it had gone too far. And if they were bold enough to threaten through anonymous texts and fake videos, they weren't going to stop unless we stopped them first. I made a call to a friend I hadn't spoken to in years, a guy I used to work with in IT before everything changed. We weren't close anymore, but he owed me a favor, and right now I needed someone who could trace mask numbers and dig into digital footprints. Within an hour, he had results. I traced the IP behind the messages and video file. He told me over the phone. They came from a residential connection. Belongs to Mark Jennings. I froze. That name hit hard. Mark Jennings, my wife's ex-husband. Emma's biological father. It all made a sick kind of sense. He never approved of me. Always said I was temporary, a phase. Over the years, he'd stayed polite in front of his daughter but distant, like he was just waiting for me to slip up. And now, it looked like he'd finally taken matters into his own hands. I didn't want to believe it. But the facts were right in front of me. He had access to Emma's school network. He knew enough about my past to dig up the worst parts. And he knew exactly how to get to her by making her question everything we had built. That evening, I asked Emma's mom to meet us. When she heard what happened, she was furious. Not just at Mark, but at herself for not seeing it sooner. Together, we arranged a meeting with the school board and presented the evidence. It wasn't easy. There were questions, doubts, even hesitation. But in the end, the truth was too clear to ignore. Emma's name was cleared. The posts were taken down. And Mark? Legal action was filed. Restraining orders were discussed. His intentions had gone too far, and everyone saw it now. But just as things began to calm, Emma received one final message. No video. No threats. Just 5 words, asterisk, this isn't over. Not yet. Asterisk, and just like that, the piece we thought we had found cracked again. That final message stayed with us longer than any of the others. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it echoed in our minds, keeping us on edge. Still, after everything that had happened, we weren't the same scared people anymore. We had faced the worst of it and stood together. The fear was there, sure, but now it came with strength. Emma didn't flinch the way she used to. Instead, she handed me the phone and said, "We already know who he is. He can't scare me anymore." And she meant it. You could see it in her eyes. She'd grown in the middle of all this chaos. Hurt, yes, but stronger. We handed that last message to the authorities. By then, with the digital trail and the school's involvement, the case against Mark Jennings had enough weight. He was warned officially and put under close monitoring. The school also implemented stricter policies around student privacy and digital harassment. Emma's story had opened a bigger conversation among parents, teachers, and students about online safety and emotional support. That part, at least, turned into something meaningful. Emma's mom and I had a long talk that weekend. There were things between all of us that had never been fully addressed. Co-parenting, trust, the lines between past and present. But something about this experience forced those conversations to finally happen. We weren't perfect, but we were finally aligned where it mattered, keeping Emma safe, emotionally and physically. The days that followed were quieter. Emma returned to school slowly, supported by staff and a few friends who stuck by her. Some kids apologized. Others didn't. But she stopped looking for their approval. She focused more on her art, started drawing again, and began sharing her feelings through it. One night, she showed me a sketch of the couch, the one we sat on when she first came home crying. We were both in it, sitting side by side, wrapped in the same blanket. No words. Just that quiet moment. That drawing now hangs in our hallway. There were still moments of tension. Healing doesn't happen all at once. But the house felt lighter. The distance between Emma and me, the one that had always lingered, started to fade. She'd come into the kitchen and tell me about her day. Sometimes she'd sit on the porch while I grilled dinner. Nothing big, just everyday things that had once felt so far away. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she looked up and said, "I'm glad I came to you that night." I didn't say anything right away. I just nodded, feeling something settle in my chest. It all started with a knock at the door and a quiet voice asking, "Can I sleep next to you tonight?" That simple question cracked open everything. But it also gave us a chance to rebuild, to understand each other better, and to realize how fragile yet powerful trust can be. We didn't just survive the storm. We found each other in the middle of it. And that changed everything.